This small workshop directly purchased scrapped steel rims for modification. The modification process was basically manual, but the quality of the modified wheels and tracks was very high. These discarded roller wheels were purchased at a price of 500 grams per pound. This small workshop could only modify them. This time they needed to widen the steel rims, so the master cut off both sides and then widened the middle position for modification. It was relatively simple. The equipment equipped with it quickly cut off one side. Then the master needed to cut the other side. The process was also very simple. After correcting the cutting position, the master cut off both halves of the steel rim after 25 minutes of meticulous cutting. Then the steel plate used to widen the middle of the steel rim could be processed. In order to shape the ordinary steel plate into a round shape, the master needed to use a bending machine for meticulous bending. The bending equipment they used in this process, it was the lowest configuration. Now the masters need to operate by feeling. After a series of operations by experienced masters, the steel plate has been quickly shaped to a standard shape. The next thing the masters need to do is to splice this steel plate to the cut steel ring. In order to prevent the gap at the splicing point from deviating, the masters will first use an angle grinder to grind the cut tree. After careful grinding to ensure that the surface is smooth enough, the bent steel plate can be installed. The purpose of this installation process is to find the overall concentricity. The masters use electric welding to simply weld and fix the whole process. The progress is still very fast. For the angles that are not right, the masters make detailed adjustments and knock from time to time to ensure that the position is not deviated. After the two masters have worked together for a while, the steel ring is finally spliced. After the splicing, then fix the steel ring to the rotating frame and weld the internal joints with gas-shielded welding. Gas-shielded welding generates less heat, which can effectively reduce the heat of the joints compared to traditional electric welding. The welding is completed quickly. Then you can weld the outside. For the welding method of the outside, we directly use the more advanced by Tiger Welding. This welding process has higher welding efficiency than the former and is not easy to produce pores and clamping. To ensure that the steel ring will not fall off in subsequent use, the master also needs to transplant the internal wheel spokes. In order to remove this wheel spoke intact, we first use the lathe tool, when you only need to use a sledgehammer to knock. The wheel spoke in the middle of the ring will be separated quickly. Then the master only needs to use steel paper to make detailed measurements to ensure that the installation position of the wheel spoke will not deviate. The master can use electric welding to fix it. This welding process is still very simple. After a series of head-to-head operations, the entire steel ring is finally modified Chinese. If there are 10 points, how many points would you give?